Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's. Hello, beautiful friend. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so delighted to have you here, and I am reporting live from a sea of peonies that I am swimming in. Oh my goodness. This has been such a fabulous, fast and furious peony season. We had really cold weather for a week that slowed the roll, and then it got super hot. And the biggest day of harvesting, I harvested 450 stems in one day. Oh my goodness. And also recorded 5 podcast interviews. So it was a doozy of a day of all fabulous, wonderful things. And I am just so appreciative of this beautiful life that I've carved out for myself. And it is just one yes after the other. And sometimes the yeses to myself are putting more good things on my calendar and on my plate and in my life. And sometimes my yeses are taking things off that list. So more about that coming, but I'll tell you what, it won't be peonies that are coming off my list, and it will not be the podcast that's coming off my list, and it will not be Paris that's coming off my list, but anything that doesn't start with a P should be very nervous. Okay, so I hope you are doing well, that you are leaning in to a new season ahead. It's just such a beautiful opportunity to reflect and reframe and redirect our intentions and our efforts in ways that are really in service. And I am supporting you and cheering you on in that process. And I know that these conversations are ways that we can connect. How we find our stories in each other's is profound and beautiful to me. And I am delighted to share today's conversation with Dr. Hilary Cauthen. She is a clinical sports psychologist based in Austin, Texas. She was a Division I college track athlete before embarking on a career focusing on the mental health and mental performance dimensions of high performers. She studied and competed at the University of New Hampshire and Miami, Ohio, before completing her doctorate in clinical psychology at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in Los Angeles. Dr. Cauthen is the founder of Texas Optimal Performance and Psychological Services. Her private practice has steadily grown over the past decade and now includes a dedicated team of 6 providers delivering comprehensive care to athletes, parents, coaches, and sports organizations throughout Greater Austin. Dr. Cauthen formerly served as the Director of Organizational Wellness and Performance for Austin FC and the Performance Psychologist for the San Antonio Spurs, where she developed their mental performance and wellness programs. Dr. Cauthen has developed private businesses that bring mental wellness curriculum to school districts across the nation, as well as an analytics company that helps predict the behavioral risk factors in players for teams in the NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, and Premier League. She actively serves as the Association for Applied Sports Psychology and is the newly elected president-elect. Her work with high performance is breaking down stigma across communities, which is highlighted in her book, Hello, Trauma, Our Invisible Teammate, and continued in her weekly podcast titled Highs and Lows of X's and O's. I know that you will really enjoy this conversation with Dr. Hilary Cauthen. Hilary, I am so delighted to have you here. I am personally very, very interested in your work. And so I love that the universe has brought us together for this fabulous conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you. I can't wait to dive into all the things we're going to talk about today.
It's so fun. And you know this already because you are also a podcaster. These are
Mhm.
just such beautiful, it's like speed dating with the most beautifully vetted candidates that you just already know is going to be a delightful hour to spend together.
Mhm. Completely agree. And the energy that comes from this is amazing.
It's so good. I love it. So let's just start out. I would love to know, how are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
I think I'm really in a more mindful rest area. So I'm definitely saying yes to rest.
Mhm.
Napping has always been my go to, but I think just listening to my body a little bit more and knowing when I need to just be like, nope, not today. We're going to rest.
My gosh, I love that. And I am so inspired by your action. My word for 2025 is more of a mantra, and that is to let it be easy. And
Mm,
it has been such an unlearning for me
yep.
because my brain had no evidence that letting something be easy was an effective way to approach life as a single parent running a property and a business that has all sorts of, it's an octopus of a business for all the arms and legs it has of it, that could actually be easy. It was always fun, and
Yeah.
I delight in the work of my hands, but how that's interacting with rest and even the concept for me that it is safe to be at rest,
Mhm.
that's really been something that I've been continuing to unpack. How has that worked for you?
It's a rewiring. I think, I'm a mom of 4 girls. I run
Oh,
my own
wow.
business and knowing that like I'm also modeling like when's it important to slow down. Like the things are going to get done. I've always been this high achiever, all the things, but I have to practice what I preach and I also have to be able to be on when I need to be on. And you're more effective when you actually rest and have energy. And so my bedtime has definitely switched from the 11:30 to kind of the 9:30, 10 o'clock framework, just so I can do the things that I really want to do this year.
Right? I love that. I am a very much an early to bed, early to rise girl. So I am also a mom of a daughter, but just one. And it was a very long road to her. I spent 24 Mother's Days wanting someone to call me mom, and
Mm,
finally went the international adoption route and adopted Amelia when she was 2. And thought, this is so great. You know, she's 2. So how easy will
mhm,
that be? I'm just going to take her everywhere I go and it's going to be so fun. And I don't have to, she already knows all of these things. And I really had no idea how it takes all day long every day until that happened. And I also thought, in going to bed, I would, put her down for bed and she needed me to be there. And I always thought, oh, as soon as she falls asleep, I'll get up and I'll send all the emails and do all the work and communicate with all my brides and all of those things because I was a wedding planner at the time. And that is not what happened. I immediately, as a new mom, started getting 12 hours of sleep, like the opposite of most new
mhm.
moms, because I slept when she slept and
Just
I
crash when she
never
crashed,
got up.
yeah.
Yep. I probably fell asleep before she did.
Yeah.
So it's been such an interesting, just an interesting shift, how sometimes these things happen out of necessity because of all of these outside forces. I'm sure in
Mhm.
medical school, you were not getting tons of sleep. You were doing whatever was required of you. But now in this new season, we get to have a different practice.
Yeah, and I love it. Setting the priorities is like really a game changer.
It is. And you can't really, well, you can't steer a parked car. It's not going to go anywhere. So setting those priorities, setting those intentions are how we get anywhere that we want to
Mhm.
go. And I love how important it is to you. Of course, it's important to you, modeling this for your daughters as well. How are you seeing that it's playing out differently for them than it did for you when you were their age?
They still fight bedtime. My little one, I think it's all she's just, as she says, super attached to me. So she wants me to still lay with her and sleep with somebody and all the things, but they love it. They've always been nappers with me too. And they understand, like, we've always kind of had the motto, like, hey, if we're gonna do X, Y, or Z, we gotta go rest now. So take your naps, so you can go have fun, or let's go to bed early so we can do the things. But I think they're realizing the shift in just the time and the presence that I can be there now because I have rest and I'm not so pushing myself to the limits. They understand, like, I'm much more mindful and in the moment with them. And so I think we're just all functioning at a better pace now.
Oh, that's beautiful. So,
Yeah.
what are you filling your days with?
Yeah, so I have a private practice where there's 6 other practitioners in my practice too. We work a lot in the community with high performers, athletes, musicians, surgeons, anyone who wants to optimize their either mental health, mental well-being, or the performance side. So a lot of individual teamwork. And then I have my book. So I've been doing a lot of promoting on my book, which is called Hello Trauma, Our Invisible Teammate. And it really kind of highlights and redefines what trauma is and helps really shift the sport culture. Uses sport as this microcosm of society and how we reinforce trauma to exist, and doing a lot of leadership training on just trying to make organizations function and focus on mental health and mental well-being for those that are in their environments.
Oh my gosh, it's such big, important work.
Yeah, it's very big. It's very, like, how do you shift these systemic things that have
Right.
existed for so long and to speak about the things that are spoken silently, and I'm speaking about them publicly and saying, "Hey, this is not okay. Like, we can be better."
Right. How is that going?
Yeah, I think,
Say
I
more.
I love it. Yes, I think when I say things, people are like, "Yes, absolutely." I'm like, "Okay, but now what?" Right? It always has to follow up with action. So words are not enough. Like, we definitely
Mhm.
have to have actions, and it's going to be a big shift, right? And but I'm not going to stop because I'm so passionate about trying to make the shift and make it be a really beautiful place that we care about humans and we can do all the things in beautiful ways, just in a much caring, empathetic nature.
Right. And of course, it's not just the flip of a switch
Mhm.
or the change of command or anything. It is a movement,
Yeah.
and it requires a groundswell of people that are feeling seen and heard, that
Mhm.
are being led and spoken for
Yeah.
in a way that is healing and encouraging. How did you get started, and how are you finding the process shift? Like, how are you course correcting along the way and categorizing the wins and all of those good things?
Yeah. I mean, I was a very competitive youth athlete to collegiate athlete, went through my own systems and processes and understood how sport impacted me in such beautiful ways, and could be such an impact for people as well. And really became my career. I knew at 14 I was going to be a sports psychologist. But I also experienced some really traumatic things that impacted my mental health and weren't great and just didn't feel okay. And it was icky,
Right.
right? And so I could see both
Right.
sides of it. And I always knew that as I was working through this. And the dichotomy was so real of how do we allow this to exist? How do we allow coaches who have such power and impact talk to our kids in certain ways, and the shaming and blaming and just really impacted mental health. And mental health when I was an athlete and even when I was early in my career was not something our athletes were talking about. It was still
Right.
such stigma. And I was like, well, we got to treat it like they're humans. Athletes are humans and they suffer, and they're suffering in silence a lot. It's this invisible illness that we need to kind of highlight. And I always wanted to be on the prevention side, even though I work much more on an intervention based approach. I was like, what can I shift and be more preventative based and use this as common language? And that's kind of been my mission since I went in through my studies into my early career. And then I did a TEDx that really sparked it in 2018 on the toxic culture of sport on athletes' mental health. And that was right when the shift of mental health was becoming more prominent in sport and professional athletes. So the timing kind of worked out beautifully. And then, like I said, in 2023, my book came out in December. So it's been out for just over a year, and really has been kind of saying, hey, like, let's talk about this even further. And let's talk about how athletes experience these things and humans experience these things and redefining it, making meaning of it. And I think first was awareness building, and then it
Mhm.
became into, okay, where's the small impact, right? Education. What systems can we work on? And that's the hardest part. Is it professional? Is it youth? Like, where do you work at? And as much as I was seeing so much impact and growth for people coming to me individually, I was still just treating a problem and not
Mm.
fixing the issues. And so speaking out more publicly, having the podcast, going on the books events, and really trying to get in where key stakeholders are, and positions I've had of just educating and saying, hey, like, coaches, you have so much power. Like, how can we
Right.
think differently? How can you understand your role differently and educate you differently? And for the youth sport, like, that's such a target that we have to be better to educate, provide an educational system so our kids can be safe and our kids can have enjoyment in sport.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that work. How are you doing that? And how have you been surprised and delighted by
Yeah.
by things that are accepted and encouraged, and where are you experiencing some roadblocks that are significant and you would like help with my sledgehammer?
Yeah. A lot of my lovely past athletes who ever hear the story or read the book, and even if they're not athletes, anyone who's kind of read the book has been like, "Oh my gosh, thank you for putting words to my feelings. I
Right.
needed someone to explain this and feel seen and heard in a way that I haven't been." So that's so beautiful to hear, and I resonate for anyone who's been impacted. That's what I want my book to do, is to actually have them make meaning of what they've experienced. And a
Yes.
lot of my individuals, especially my athletes, have been like, wow, thank you. Like, I'm not alone. And I think the reality is a lot of people have experienced this in these high performance pressure domain environments, whether that's
Sure.
Wall Street or sport or whatever it is. It is such a place to kind of have bracketed morality and allow things to exist that are not okay. And I'm kind of saying it doesn't have to be that way. So I love
Right.
the impact it has on people who've experienced it. The slow shift, and I've been in part of organizations where they have welcomed my education and they've wanted to be better and they've wanted to speak about it, but it takes a lot to move a ship that's been sailing a certain way to then turn. And the hardest part is the leadership in organizations to buy into what you're saying.
Right.
They're all about wins, and feelings don't lead to wins in their mind sometimes, and so we have to convince them how feelings will lead to wins when your athletes are healthy.
Right. I mean, even taking one institution into
Hmm.
like, a college in your town even,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And where would you start? I mean, is it the boosters? Is it the alumni because the system of power
Hmm.
is very complicated. That's not an excuse. Like,
Yeah.
it's also
Yeah.
nonsense and cannot continue.
Hmm.
And there's something about even physically when some poison or toxin is leaving your body, it erupts very loudly,
Yeah.
and that's a sign of it moving out. So I imagine that in this passion and good work that you're doing, that there's a lot of evidence of a lot of loud resistance and a lot of noise that is almost like covering your ears like a toddler. La 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 la. I'm not listening to
Yes,
you.
that
And
does happen, in fact.
I believe that because there
Yeah.
are so many people that are impacted by the fear of the unknown on the other side of this thing. Even if you promise, promise, promise that it's good.
Yeah, like, how can you convince them it's gonna be good, right? They have to really
Right.
buy into it. It's interesting, right, of where do you start? And I think that the easy access I have is to my athletes, right? But there has to be trust and there has to be believability in those that have hired you, and you have to have an alignment and you have to support them. But if we truly look at it, as much as the organization and leadership has power, our athletes are the ones performing, and our
Mhm.
athletes have a lot of power if they come together.
Exactly.
And that's the part that's like, okay, like if I can help them get on board, they really do set the locker room tone, they set the tone of the field, they are the ones playing, but they can easily be cut, transferred as well, depending on what level they're at. So it's kind of a fine balance of both. And you hope that the leadership that believes in you and that you're doing the work stays with you, because oftentimes they might not, and they might lose their job, and then you might lose your job. And so it's really a difficult battle, but it doesn't say we have to stop, right?
Oh gosh, no. Right, and
We
I
just
don't
have to
wanna
be a
be
little bit
like
louder.
I'm not trying to remind you of like, "Wait, what actually am I doing? Why am I doing this?" Like,
Yeah,
it's important
it's
work. It's,
super
you
important.
know,
Yeah.
the first people that used their voice in a really big public way in the Me Too movement, in
Yeah.
a million places. Of course, your focus is on sports. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's, the fast food restaurant I worked at in high school. It's,
Oh, yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
it's unbelievable that it happens. It's also what I've just become aware of in the past couple of months. Some recollections are coming up for me about things that happened that were incredibly unsavory. And in working through those and in using my voice to
Mhm.
say, listen, this is not okay. And here's my stand. And here's why my stand, like, even I'm like, I've been sexually assaulted so many times that
Mhm.
it doesn't, that I can utter that sentence like, okay, please don't get hung up there because that it just happened, whatever. What I'd like you to focus on is
Mhm.
no is a full sentence. And there were some people that should have shown up for me because I was a kid, all of these things. And then to look back and go, oh my gosh, like I'm even discounting it myself
Mhm.
because it happened so many times.
Yeah.
And the narrative around those instances just, and I'm the farthest thing from an athlete. I'm a stat girl. Like I'm not even
Mhm. Mhm.
in the pressure of performance. I was under the pressure of popularity and this system that makes the victim feel like the villain.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
wrong. I mean, I'm glad the two of us have a microphone. And I mean, it's such important big work. The reason that I ask about all of those different elements is really a way of saying, I see you and
Mhm.
I see what may look like a giant wall because you're standing so close to it and all you can do is look straight up and you only see bricks as far as the eye can see. But
Yeah.
when I see of you, it's like, oh, I could see what's on the other side of the wall. And it's
Mhm.
so good. And you actually don't have to go over it. You can go right through it. Like, what would be the most pleasurable way to
Yeah.
change the system? And how do
Mhm.
we do this collectively? And how does this come with a tsunami of love? It's just right. It's the right
Yeah.
thing to do. Like everything, the people in power maybe being loud and not wanting to change anything because they can't see on the other side of the wall either, and they're afraid. And
Mhm.
I see you, and I am cheering you on. And when it feels like that wall is really big, just
Yeah.
go high. Go high
Mhm.
so you can see on the other side of it because it's necessary work and it's like, those ingredients we put in these individual intentional incremental changes over time that by themselves don't look like anything or aren't
Mhm.
even yummy on their own, but in the right environment, they become a delicious chocolate
Yep.
cake. If you
Yep.
just hang in there and keep at the recipe.
Mhm.
It's big, queen.
Yes, and you say all the things, right? Doing the right thing is really hard, right? Which is silly, it shouldn't be, but it
Right.
is,
Why do you
and
think that is? Why is it hard? Is it
Um,
unfamiliar and uncomfortable, or
Yeah,
is it
and I think
hard?
it's, I think it's fear of judgment, fear of the evaluation of others. Those are two common things that we have, right? That impact what we do. And so I think this fear of evaluation gets in the way of people just doing what is right. And I guess defining what is right morally, right? Like I guess that we don't all align potentially, but to me and the things I'm
Well,
working on, I'm
some
like,
things, yeah.
I think we all align on all the things of we should do no harm to individuals. And
Right,
like that's pretty common sense. But
right.
for some reason it's not common sense because we don't protect, as you said, you don't have people show up for you or protect you or help you. um, and the things that we're speaking about today and the things I speak about, they're scary. They're like, oh, we don't talk about trauma, we don't talk about sexual abuse, we don't talk about mental health. Like these things we have to keep quiet. I'm like, why? Like they exist all around us. Like
Exactly.
we
Like,
have to talk about them.
actually give me nothing to talk about. Would you
Yeah.
please? Because I'll stop talking as soon as you behave appropriately.
Yeah, but people don't like to talk about things that make them feel uncomfortable. They don't have an answer to it, so they're not going to want to talk about it.
Right, which doesn't make any sense
Hmm.
because all of their action is actually causing severe discomfort
Yes.
to
Inaction is the
another
worst thing to
human,
do. Yes.
right?
Inaction is the worst thing to do for someone who's
Gosh.
gone through something.
Okay, we need to rule the world because
You
this
need to
is
take
just
over.
silly. It's just dumb. Those whole way that things are working is just
Mhm.
not working.
Agreed.
Okay, so I'm already hot. I had to take off my jacket. It's 14 degrees outside. It's only a tiny bit warmer inside my house because
Yeah.
it's 240 years old, but now I'm fired up.
Mhm.
So, can you help me from the perspective of a parent?
Mhm.
What can a parent do if their child is being abused on the little league field or in their high school sports program or their club, whatever? Like I said, I'm not an athlete. I don't know
Yeah,
what
yeah,
all
of
the
course. No.
things are called. So,
Well, and I think this is a great start because parents don't realize how much control they have over actually doing their own research and understanding like what environment should I place my child into.
right.
As I said, I'm a mom of four and I have my girls, and sport is such a passion of mine. I love sport. I want them to do sport. Um, and I have failed numerous times as a parent in terms of putting them in things too early when I shouldn't have because I got
Mhm.
excited, like, oh, they can be so great. I'm like, they don't need to be on that high level club team right now at the age of 6. But look, I'm about to fail again. I put my kid, who's 5, my youngest, in this select academy because she's so good at soccer, and she got noticed that she's in an academy system, which is really high level at 5. It's so silly when I speak into it out loud, but I'm still failing, so I'm still doing it.
You'll
But,
know.
but,
You
but
don't know if you're failing yet, do you?
well, no, I say that in terms of like she's just 5, right? It can still be fun, and paying these ridiculous fees to put her in this high level thing so she maybe can be great one day. Like maybe, but
Right. Giving up all your weekends. Ugh.
yeah. So there's just like the silliness of it that I'm like, okay. But she's talented, she has fun, so why not? But
Right.
as parents, I think looking at the environment you're putting your kids into, what is the
Yeah.
educational level of coaches? Like, I didn't think through this at first, and until I became a parent, I was like, oh wow, there's so much we can do. And I think parents need to realize, like, you should really look at, do the coaches have qualifications? Are they required to have background checks? Like, are they safe humans? I love every parent that wants to volunteer coach to be with their kid or to be a part of that and give their time. But if you know you're putting your kid into a league that has volunteer coaches, you must know that not all the parents or the coaches will have the technical expertise to potentially coach your child, and they're just doing it to be with their kid. So getting mad at them on the sidelines for not playing that great or winning or anything like that, that we see such abusiveness on the sidelines to coaches is
Right.
also not okay because you put them in an environment where it's a volunteer system, it's recreation. They're not trained coaches at the technical level. So let's not yell at them for these kids not performing that well or not playing your kid or all the things of the X's and O's. And so partly it's know the environment, know the education system that you're training that you're going to get for your child, know what, when we say like abuse that exists in sport, people will not define it as abuse. But if I have a child who's getting called out of their name and yelled at and shamed and punished in physical ways that we deem okay in sport, but would never happen in any other environment, like you need to say something. You need to be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, like, you don't need to talk to my child that way." Like, that's
Right.
not okay. And that takes a lot, right? Because a lot of parents aren't going to disrupt the system. They don't want their kids to not get playing time. That's why we reinforce it to exist.
Right?
And
Every coach is so happy that Amelia is not an athlete because there's something different about parenting in your 50s
mhm.
compared to when you're younger. It's like, "Oh, I really am not here for your feelings, sir. I'm here to parent well."
There's certain things that you can understand, like, if they raise their voice to get the team to pay attention is different,
Sure.
but if you call my kid out of their name and you shame them and embarrass them numerous times and never have a follow-up corrective experience to say, "I'm so sorry," or anything, that's not
Mhm.
an environment I want my kid to grow up in. I don't want
Right.
my kid to learn that that is okay to be talked to that way, that that's okay to motivate them. There are other ways to go about that, and there are beautiful coaches that impact them with very high standards. Like, every time I speak about this, people think, "Oh, you don't care about sport, you don't want them to win." I'm like, "No, the standard's the standard. We all wanna go win. We just don't
Right.
have to win by being in a negative way to think that's gonna motivate a kid to love the sport, because kids drop out of sport still at 70% by the age of 13. Like, we haven't
Mm.
changed that statistic in years. It's ridiculous. Like,
Ooh,
kids
that's
drop
interesting.
out because it's not fun, and if
Mhm.
it's not fun, it's because of the environment.
Right.
And I just see, as sport has become such a business in the collegiate area, it's gonna become a business lower that trickle-down effect will exist, right? Youth sport is such a business for the sport tourism areas and the money that goes into it. Like, it's just gonna keep being a mess, and kids are gonna lose opportunities because of it.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
So now beyond parenting the young child,
Mhm.
what do I do if, like, my child is in the college system
Yeah.
now? And so what can that person do? So there's an athlete or someone listening, their child is a college athlete, and you know something is happening because you know your kid. Are there different things we can do at different stages, or is it just do better overall? Like,
I mean, first, I think it's listening to your kid and see what your kid needs, right? Like, what
mhm,
does your kid need in that moment? What kind of resources do they need? Do they just need you to love them and be there for them? Do you need to get them additional resources like mental health support or a mental performance coach to help them just have someone to talk to outside of the system? Do you need to remove them from the environment? You know, is it at a point where it actually needs to be reported, right? There are reporting
mhm,
systems that you can go to. Safe Sport is one of the most common ones that you can kind of report to, without directly going to the organizations, right? But you can report, and you can do an anonymous report, you can do an immediate report. But if it's to that extreme that there's Title IX that protects our college athletes, that is an environment to help them feel safe and secure. Um, Oftentimes we know people don't want to report. They'll
mhm,
minimize, as we know. It's one of the things I speak about in my book. Is one of the first stages of anyone who's gone through anything is this idea of minimization.
mhm.
And then the second one is enabling, where we feel we've enabled it to exist. It is our fault, right? So
Exactly.
oftentimes the athletes that are in that moment are like, I must just not have been good enough. I wasn't performing well enough, whatever might have
Mhm.
occurred. And they fear the ramifications. It's really hard for someone to stand up and say, I need help.
Right.
And in places where we know that people often haven't been helped, then they're not going to want to speak out. And so I think for parents, it's much more, what do I immediately need to do to fix this? What is it within my control, especially if they have a collegiate athlete who's actually technically an adult, right? They have very
Mhm.
limited access to do things. But it doesn't mean they have to stay quiet. They can
Sure.
still speak out and get resources. But the first thing is just protect your child and help them for what they need.
Thank you for that. And now, as the athlete, I
Hmm.
mean, something happens with any person that's experienced any trauma of any kind, whether it was one time or one time after the other. We create this narrative that is not in service to us, that puts us at fault for somebody
Hmm.
else's bad behavior. And then also, well, it's been happening and I have never said anything, so it's not really okay to say something now. I mean, we gaslight ourselves
Hmm.
incredibly easily. So what have you noticed, and what do you coach your clients and patients to do to stand up because again, like they can't see on the other side of the wall either. And it feels
Mhm.
like my life will be over if I say what happened, or I'll be shamed, or I'll be ridiculed, or whatever. I'll have to pay all the price. How are we emboldening people to use their voice and require better?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the hard part. I've had one story that was so beautiful, where someone had come to me who had read my book, and they said, because of your book, I was able to stand up and speak out about something that happened to me. And I was like shook. I couldn't believe it. Like, that's the most profound compliment I could have ever received. Not that my book just touched something they heard, but that they actually were able to stand up and stop something that was happening to them in the environment that they were working in and ask for help and have it not be okay and say, this is not okay. This has been happening to me. This person is sexually harassing me. Like, please help me. And it was beautiful to see. And for her to share that with me and have the courage to be able to do that, I was just like, I don't even know what to say. Like, this is amazing. Like, I'm so proud of you.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people, some will never speak their story out loud to those that have harmed them.
Mhm.
That is okay if that's where they're at. It's much more of,
Sure.
can they heal from that? And
Exactly.
what is it that they need? And I always ask them, like, what do you need in this environment? If they're not currently, and oftentimes I get individuals that are not in the current state of abuse that has occurred, or it's at a point that they're defining it as emotional abuse, which is so much harder to report versus the physical or sexual assault that might occur.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's more of making meaning of the experience for them and healing from that and changing the patterns and dynamics that existed so they can have trusted relationships.
Mm.
And the hardest part that we experience with anyone who's gone through anything significant that they've defined as trauma is this idea of healing and what is healing. Because
Mhm.
if you say you're healed, those that have gone through something fear that what they went through then will be forgotten.
Mm.
And they don't want to forget that part of them. As dark as it is, they don't want to
Mhm.
forget the part that hurt them, because that is like, they want the world to know this is not okay. This happened to me and this is hurtful. But they also want to heal. And so it's this really hard balance of, can I ever be healed, or am I always healing?
Mm. Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love what you said about making meaning of their experience.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful space to hold for
Yeah.
anybody in
Hmm.
whatever area of life that they've experienced a
Yeah.
trauma. And, I think we talk about this even in my earlier example of sexual abuse. That's speaking from a scar, not a wound.
Hmm.
Like I've healed from that in the acceptance, far from the approval of the
Right.
bad behavior. And now I would like to put light on it and encourage people to live the life that they want
Hmm.
and have their own desire and well being be the marker that determines if this is what we're doing today or if we're
Yeah.
doing something different. And to do that from a place of empowerment
Hmm.
and belief
Yeah.
that you really can have the life that you desire going forward, regardless of what has happened.
Hmm.
How are you seeing this beautiful time in our life with the presence of social media, with the presence of people being very connected and story being able to move through awarenesses of so many people at such a rate, even with your TED Talk, the fact that someone you did that in 2017, someone
Hmm.
can access it right now. So
Yeah.
how are you seeing this as a beautiful tool to help the momentum of this tsunami of goodness that you are coming, this
Mhm.
this movement that you are a part of?
Yeah, I think it's the accessibility, right? For those
Yeah.
that have access to it and the messaging and different ways to get the messaging out there. Part of the passion that I started, the podcast I have called Highs and Lows of X's and O's, it stemmed from a book event that I did. I did this book event with a panel of ex athletes. Some are current coaches, some are broadcasters, some were on different mental health movements themselves. And they were up there and I was speaking to them about how the book resonated, how their athletic experience went through, and they were sharing the resiliencies and the struggles they had and what had occurred and what they hid and how they became who they are now. And it really sparked this idea of I didn't know all their stories. They were just great humans that I were like, they're going to talk about my book. It's going to be perfect. We're going to talk about trauma and
Right.
sport and all the stuff because of where they were at. And then I realized like there's so much power in story sharing and there's so much power in exposure. And I said, how beautiful would it be if I actually just had a podcast that had athletes and high performers come in and talk and share their story and share representation, right? The guests that I've had on so far, I'm like, this is wonderful. Like you were a 5-time Hall of Famer, you had all the success, and someone can listen to your story and they can look at you and be like, I wish I could be like you, but I also know I am like you because I've experienced this. And I would have had
Right.
no idea without that story share. And so the first part is really sharing the story. And then the second part that I do with that podcast is I always kind of give a teaching moment, a little mental cheat code that the athlete has given me on the guest of like, if they had only learned this. So then I actually get to teach and show what the work looks like. So I'm not hiding behind a curtain. I get to give you 15 minutes of here's what mental performance sports psychology looks like and teaching, exposing it right out to everybody. So there's access to it. In my field, a lot of people sports psychology is a luxury service to go get, or they're unsure of
Sure.
what it looks like. And so I'm like, I'm going to teach you and I'm going to give you 15 minutes of something every other week. So you get a little nugget and then maybe you'll find somebody or it's enough for you. So it's
Right.
a beautiful way to use my voice to share things, to have other people share stuff, and make change without necessarily knowing what I want to making change, but hoping I'm doing small ripples that will become bigger impacts.
For sure you are.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, that's how healing works,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
beautiful and it doesn't return void.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that you are connecting these role models to people in such a beautiful, tender way that increases the power of the story rather
Hmm.
than giving more power to the event. That
Yeah.
sometimes that's what keeps us quiet,
Yeah.
is because we think that thing will crush us as soon as it comes out of our mouth, when it loses all of its power as soon as it comes out of our mouth
Hmm.
because we are not crushed.
Yeah. But actually, a lot of them thrive. A lot of people
Right?
continue to thrive.
Right. Because they didn't become who they were because that happened to them. They became who they are because of who they are
Right.
and who they gave themselves permission to be, even though that thing happened
Hmm.
over and over, whatever it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so good. Hillary, what do you want people to know? What do you want?
Yeah.
Tell us. I mean, I want to
Yes.
talk to you for hours, but I know
Yeah.
we
Well,
can't.
please tune in to the highs and lows of X's and O's. Even
Yes.
if you are not an athlete, for sure, there's stories related to it, or maybe your biggest fan might be on there. You're going to learn something. Definitely, if you want to get my book, Hello Trauma Invisible Teammate, any review also helps me putting it on Amazon or leaving reviews because it spreads the word. It is not your average mental health, trauma, self help book. I promise it's going to connect to you. Whether you're a person who's gone through trauma, you will experience someone in your life who has, and you will learn how to connect to them better just by reading this book. And it's beautiful. And then, yeah, I have some events coming up. So you can follow me on Dr. C Mindset. I'm going to be putting on some specific, like 1 day wellness webinars, these masterminds
Brilliant.
around specifically women in leadership and changing the culture. And so there's some things that people can be a part of if they're just in an organization and a leader and want to kind of have some mental health leadership training.
Oh, it's so good. And I love that you mentioning, even if you're not an athlete, of course, because it's such a beautiful subsection of our existence that you're focused on. And so much of our day to day life has a sports metaphor in it, even if we're not playing it. And it's similarly to when you are coaching somebody, you can almost hear the coaching better, implement it better for yourself when you're hearing somebody else get
Yeah.
it, because you're not in your own filter system or your own resistance to whatever the person is saying to you. So I love that, because what makes absolute sense that we are not going to tolerate in youth soccer, like, of course, that's a no brainer. And being able to bring that into, oh, we're also not going to tolerate that in my real estate office. Like, this,
100%.
not
Yes.
okay. You will not, I almost said you won't speak to me like that. I'm reminded of an interview I did a few weeks ago. This woman, Jennifer, she wrote this great book called How to Set a Boundary Without Being a Dick. And
Yeah.
she's super funny. And she talks about the difference between conditions and boundaries.
Hmm.
And,
Hmm.
when you say, you can't talk to me like that, that's a condition.
Yeah.
And they actually just did, so they
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
But you can just require something different. So,
Yes.
all to say, I love that it's actually easier to hear it in an environment that you're not directly involved in,
Yeah.
because you don't argue, oh, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but, yeah,
Right.
but, yeah, but. So I think it's so beautiful.
Well,
Thank you
thank you.
for inviting
Yeah.
our listeners into your world. Thank
Yeah.
you for your time. I have loved this conversation. I'm so excited to support you in this tsunami of goodness. And anything that we can do to help, I am totally here for it.
Oh, well, thank you for just letting me speak openly about it and have such a beautiful conversation. It is much needed. So I appreciate it.
My great pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site, or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wrighthouse and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.